Hello, everybody. Happy New Year's. This is Tim, just Tim. Uh, I hope you guys had a good, good New Year's and good holidays. It's 2019 now, and people are looking for New Year's resolutions and ways to change your life in a more positive way, where you can have a successful ending this year or in the middle of the year, or whatever you're looking for in your life, whether it's financial success, relationship success, family success. Um, I have a series I'm building on, the message I'm building on, where it helps you build your New Year's resolution as you move along in your life. And I been teaching about self accountability and how you have to take accountability for the time that you've been here and till the time that you leave, and you have to recite from the time that you're born and your parents teach you, mommy, daddy, the basics, and all the way through your old age, you're reciting time. And when you make your New Year's resolution, you're making future projections of yourself and where you want to be and how you want to be and how you want to look, um, and who you want to be with and who you don't want to be with and who's good for you and who's not good for you. And you have to put it in perspective in your own mind on those things, on how you project yourself. And for this new year, I would challenge everybody to look at themselves in a perspective that we are creatures of duality, and we have perspectives of good and evil, and we get to choose on the thought that we think and put a reaction to it, because our life flows from the heart. And when you're in emotional distress or an emotional state of mind where you feel like you can't function, you have a hard time projecting what you actually want to, or what you're trying to achieve. And sometimes life gets in the way when your perception of good and what's right and wrong is distorted. And when you have a distorted perception of good and evil, you go back and forth on what is good and evil, which is dual human duality, because we were born we were born in a state of mind where we need love, and we are supposed to get it traditionally from our parents. And when we don't get what we need from our parents, we have a hard time projecting our goals, um, our success. And when you grow up not knowing what's right and wrong, you're building a perception of your life that's getting in the way of your success, of what you're projecting. And when you have a hard time with putting your life in perspective of your perception, you find that you made a New Year's resolution that you gave up on or talked yourself out of doing, or said you couldn't do it because circumstances in your life where you put yourself like in a time loop of your own mind, because you're bringing up things that you should have gotten in a conversation that is supposed to be what you could get or can get, because it starts off with faith. Faith transcends logic. So when you have faith, that you put faith in a perspective where that's something that drives you, you have to put faith, actually you have to put faith in a mindset where it has to be worked out, because it's like faith is like a muscle, and the more you work it out, the bigger it gets. And when you don't have someone to teach you that faith is something that you live by and not just talk about, you you project your year better because you have a certain amount of spunk, or you have you're an optimist. And when you project in more positive way, you get more positive results. You get what you dish out, basically. You receive what you give. And it's about giving instead of receiving, because when you humble yourself and know that it's more about giving than receiving, you get more because people know and trust you, and God trusts you with more because they see that you're responsible with the little, and you're not here just to take. You're actually enjoying the moment of giving because that was the workout of your faith. God gives you faith to give. You he gives you faith, and you give faith to people who's looking for it because leaders build leaders. And if you're in the mindset where you're double-minded, people not going to understand where you're coming from. So if you speaking positive but doing negative, people are going to say, "Oh, he don't stick to his word," or "He's double-minded," or "He's two-faced," or they don't. They're not. You're not living up to the potential of what you're speaking, and you have to put in the perspective of why nobody is flocking to you or listening to you, or why your life is not going in the way and in the way it should go, because you're not presenting yourself in a way of what you're speaking or projecting, because you're saying that you want a positive life, but you're doing everything else that's negative, pushing people away, having bad attitudes, treating people like crap, and you expect them to give you something that you're not even giving yourself, which is love and respect. And in our lives, we feel like if we get our way all the time, our ego, that we can control the area we in, or control the people in our lives, or control um, what God is actually doing, which you can't, because he's God all by himself. And what he tries to do is put us in a place where we can sit down on love and put love in perspective, where we see our duality as good and evil. And in society, when we grow up, we are taught that that duality has many names, whether it's schizophrenia or the devil or your ego, which puts you in a self accountability category because you didn't put your excuses on something that wasn't real. And um, you once you put it in a perspective of self accountability, you realize that it was only you and God, and we needed God to put it in perspective so we can have something to follow. That's why he told us to follow every word that he gives us, because he only tells the truth. And when we follow people that are telling us lies, we fall in ditches that we didn't see because we put faith in something that wasn't real. So you're stepping on something that you thought was solid, but it was actually like quicksand. You stepped in it and you slowly sank into something that was meant to consume you in a way where you were sunk down into a place where you feel like nobody can reach you. So you shut off from love, or you shut yourself off from love, because love can't be shut off. But when you shut yourself off, you close the door to anybody who's willing to open themselves up to give you the love that you're actually looking for. But if you come off on a wrong reaction and not in a place of love, we're not sure if you're rejecting the help that we're trying to give you, or you're accepting it. Because if we're giving you the love and you reject it, all we can do is give it to God and give you to God and pray for you and give you as many resources as we can. But you have if you have a sense of inner inner discernment, you will see that somebody is genuinely showing you love instead of deceiving you. Because some people, the people who have knowledge of this, um, try to detour you because they have a deceitful objective, which God handles, or you're dealing with somebody who has a perception of love where they feel like they have to control everything. So once you start stepping into them helping you, and you don't do what they feel like was right, or they feel like you should have done, even though it was your life because it's self accountability, and you guys didn't come to understanding on whatever the situation is, you two have to come to a perception of what did God say about the situation, so nobody won't be misunderstood or closed off in a way where they questioning if God's love is real. So if you sorry, if you are in a place where you feel like um you can't be helped. You have to be able to open up at least to one person where you can reiterate where you got stuck in time, where you feel like somebody held you back. But you have to put it in perspective that nobody can hold you back but yourself. So when you find that thing that held you back, you have to reiterate it where if it's a issue where you have to forgive someone or you have to ask for forgiveness. Um, where when we do that, God sees us as progressing in our faith, that love is the answer to everything. And when you exercise that faith, you open up more and you start growing and taking steps to grow in areas that you felt like were weak and crumbling in your life, and you slowly start walking towards the goal that you placed when you made that New Year's resolution. Because when you made the New Year's resolution, you were projecting something that was positive, otherwise you wouldn't have put it in your projection. And but you don't put the effort into forgiving people or treating people right and making the steps of faith where it would get you to where God said He will place you. The goal that you set obtainable, but God puts you in situations where He tests your faith before He gets you to the destination. Because if He gets you to the destination early, you can squander it because you didn't exercise the necessary faith that took you to get to that place of success or your goal. So you have to watch if you're being double-minded. And the way you find out if you're double-minded is, do you have a good perception of what's good and evil? Because if you're trying to live in the middle where you sometimes you're good and sometimes you're bad and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, hopping back and forth, you look schizophrenic, where people are not sure where you're coming from, because one day you're one way and the other day you're another way. Even though we all have our good and bad days, don't take that as an excuse that you can't get back up and make it right again. So when putting that in perspective, you start to reiterate all the time that you've been here, and putting it in a lesson where you take your wrongs and you put them in a lesson where you made it right, where you could teach others in similar situations how to turn that situation around. Because they might have not gotten the lesson yet, but because you did, you have an answer or a key or wisdom to hand to somebody else to pull them up. And God sees that as He sees that as a work of faith, that you are worthy of the destination you going to, because the destination is not just for you, it's people under you who are trying to get to where you're trying to be. So turn your fallings and your mishaps or your mistakes into lessons where you can pass on to people who are trying to get to where you're trying to be. And God will bless you with the people that you brought up with you, because it's not just about you. You have to get into a state of mind where you accept that it's not about only you, because you're not the only person here. And God sees your work of faith by you taking the lessons that He taught you and passing it on to people who need it, and praying for it. You're the answer to their prayer. So you get faith and you pass on faith. You have love, you pass on love. You have to have the same state of mind as God when you're walking with Him, because He's walking with you to show you who you are. But as He's showing you who you are, He's showing you who He is. And when He show you who He is, you have to you have to reflect that in your life to other people, because that's when you start to notice that you're walking like God, you're talking like God, and you're thinking like God, because you're reflecting the lessons that He taught you, because you see that that's His personality. His personality is your personality, even though you're your own conscious being. But we are made to reflect God. We're God's reflection, and we reflect Him by how He treats His own creation with love and care. And if you're treating people nasty and you feel you're trying to get one of his or get a blessing from Him by treating His treasure like trash, then you're not going to get to the blessing you're trying to get to until you reiterate on why you didn't reflect His love to the people He sent to you to help, because that's why he helped you and got you out of situations that you weren't supposed to be in. And other people are in the situations, but when you got God's pun and lesson, you were supposed to pass it on to people who are also in need and was also in the place that you were at one point. So you are there are people, other people are reflections of we mirror each other. So when I see someone else in pain and in agony or in a place where I've been, it is my job to give them what God taught me, which was lessons in my life that I had to turn into. I mean, mistakes I've made in my life, I had to turn into lessons that I am now passing on, which is self accountability. Because everything that I've ever done, and either good or wrong or right, I had to make them right, even though they were wrong, because I had to put my wrongs into perspective, that I recited a wrong and tried to make it right when God told me no, the moment that the conviction hit me, which means I was supposed to turn around. But I convinced that wrong was the right, which made me look double minded. So that's when you start to build your ego around a lie your whole life on trying to cover that lie. So you kind of build a character around a lie that was to cover you or cover somebody else, or try to hide your face from God, or whatever the situation may be. Um, we have to we have to see that God made us whole. And when you see that you're a whole being with knowledge of good and evil. And that's what places you in God's royalty and in his in his um I would say in his house as his child, because we're king's kids. And when we know something's wrong and we put action to it, we we're actually whipped. When you don't know, you whip with one lash, and when you do know, he whips you with two, which means karma. We all deal with karma, and when we put a wrong to what was supposed to be right, God turns it around with karma. That's when you know, when you know you did wrong and you get the backlash, and you wonder and you asking God, why me, why me? He's going to point to you when he told you to turn around and make it right, so you won't look double-minded. He's the one who holds the knowledge of good and evil together in our very being, because when you got the conviction, you knew it was wrong, because we all get conviction ever since as a kid. When parents tell you not to take the cookie and you get the cookie anyway, when their back is turned, you knew it was wrong that moment. You did it because we all get convicted, because that the moment they told you not to do it pops in your head when you grab the cookie. So when we're looking for things to please the flesh, we're looking to go against God's will, because we're looking to please ourselves. So it's the knowledge of good and evil, which in history we gave it many names of trying to diagnose our duality in many ways, because we don't we didn't make sense of what it was, because we are individuals and we only can see from the outside. I can't see your inside, so I don't know what you're thinking. All I can see is your actions. So when we tried to diagnose it, we gave it many remedies and notions, trying to fix something that God only told us was to be righteous. And when you're a righteous man, you want to do right, you want to talk right, you want to live right, you want to give right, you want to love right. And in life, we do come to certain times in our life where we get options where it looks like it's pleasing to us, where it's actually harming us. And when we try to make our pleasure our main part of our life goal, such as maybe it's drugs or sex or a relationship that's abusive, and we tried to make that relationship the basis of our life because we didn't want to accept that that person was unhealthy for us. So it's either you or the other person have to come into perspective that this relationship is not healthy. Either you got to do right, or I got to do right, or this is not going to work, because it was us that is causing the situation to cause turmoil in my own conscious being. So if it was my decision to stay, then it's my decision to take the consequences that come with it, and that goes for the both individually who's trying to come together as one. So, but you got to see each other as whole, as each individual themselves have to see themselves whole first. So we can see you clearly and you can see me clearly because we are mirroring each other. But if you're blocking yourself from love, then I can't really see you because I don't know where you're coming from. You're doing stuff that is abusive, but telling me it's out of love. So you look double-minded, and I'm trying to build something with you that's stable, but you're unstable. So the foundation is uneven. So you're not on one accord. So if you're in a bad relationship, put it in perspective of what's healthy and what's unhealthy and what's right and what's wrong in your mind, where you can make a better projection, healthier projection of where you're going. And you won't be double-minded. But if you two could come together as one and put things in perspective of what's healthy and unhealthy, and I say make it work where you two recite each other relationship in a positive way, where either you guys are ready to get married or about to get married or looking at a divorce but want to make it work. um, I would say put it where you guys are not being codependent on each other's dysfunction, where you feel like you can't move on to somebody else because you feel like that's the only person you're going to ever find. But if they're abusive and you're not happy, that is a reflection of you, um, per se, because you have the option to leave or stay. So when you're done and you say this man ruined my life, and you spent 20 years convincing yourself that you can stay or make it work, it was, although that 20 years was your decision, because you could have left the moment that it got bad, because it was your decision after whatever situation it was that was abusive. You could have said, well, this is not going to work, this is not for me, I got to find something better, structure to it. If you this happened again, I'm gonna leave. Or and you got to stick to your work, because you the one who makes you healthy. It's your free will. And when we are codependent on toxic decisions, we tend to constantly make um, toxic decisions because we feel like that's the only decision we can make. Sometimes when you have a lack of self-esteem, or I would say a lack of self-love, because when you're in your right mind, self-love was the main priority. Being self-sufficient, ever since you're born, you're self-sufficient. And if you're codependent on something that's toxic to you, then you're going to start to slowly die, either mentally, emotionally, or even physically in some sad cases. Um, you can either be codependent on somebody else's issues or your own, but at the end of the day, it's still self accountability, because you get to choose. And you gotta figure out you got to figure out what's holding you to that dysfunctional behavior as an individual. You can't be codependent on your own pain, because you're gonna feel like your pain you feel like you owe your pain an excuse to do something dysfunctional, because you're gonna keep pointing back to, well, you did this and well, you did that, so I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But you're just going around in a circle trying to make this wrong or right, which is never going to happen, because it's abusive to self and abusive to others. And when you stop being codependent on your own pain, you finally realize that you could have been free the whole time, and you heal. It takes time to build yourself up, but at the end, it's you who has to build you. And when you find God, he shows you who you are by showing you who He is. So you have a faster and comfortable and loving friend who always there to help you and build you up and get you out of those places where you feel like you're drowning. And he wants you healthy, but you got to want to be healthy yourself to move forward in that projection of success that you're looking for. So take a step back at yourself before you make a New Year's resolution and say, what is it that I really need to change, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally? And I would say start emotionally, which changes the mind because God uh, changes the mind through the heart. When you feel love, it comes from the heart. When you feel conviction, it comes from the heart, and you have um, a better sense of reiterating your life and projecting your life when you reiterate how you feel, because that gives you a clear picture in your mind of where you're at. And when you have a picture of mind where you're at, you have a clearer picture of where you want to go. But if you have a picture of the past that's holding you back from the future, that's where you have to sit in the now and put all of it in perspective. And sometimes it takes time depending on what you've been through in your life. So take a step back, sit down on love with God because He said, "Be still," and He'll plant you where He want to plant you. You just have to be good fruit. You can't be bitter fruit, and you going out trying to give bitter fruit that nobody want to eat and say everybody else got the problem. Where you have to sit down and let God plant His seeds in you, and you become sweet. And you have sweet fruit, and that's where you start projecting where you want to be and who you want to be with, and it becomes sweeter as you go along, and you let God to shape you with His personality, and you start to see your own personality, because sometimes you look in the mirror, you don't know who you are, and the one who created you will take you there. So um that all, I'm starting this vision of peace, with self accountability. I've been working on for the past year or two. Um, I can't wait to continue with this journey and uh, meet you cheeky people who I've been talking to. I've been on this journey for a long time. I'm 29 years old, and uh, I plan on projecting this message in this company for the rest of my life, actually, because we all deal with duality and trying to get a good perception of how we can project ourselves, but we can't project it in two different directions. You only can go one direction because you're one individual who serves one individual God who holds your duality together of knowledge of good and evil. So that's it for today. Hope you have a good new year. Hope that helped out a little bit. Have a blessed day.